Encountering a powerful CEO, a hotel cleaner suddenly has to sign a dating and love contract. From an awkward encounter at a hotel, the clumsy cleaning lady suddenly becomes the fake girlfriend of a powerful CEO. But behind that unexpected relationship is a plot that could ruin both of them. Before we begin, please leave a comment to let us know where you are watching the video. And when you finish, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Hope you enjoy the story to the fullest. The hotel room door swung open. Lana Bennett pushed the cleaning cart inside, her eyes glued to the shift assignment sheet. Room 1505. This must be it, she muttered, putting on her gloves and whistling softly. The room was empty, the curtains swaying slightly in the breeze from the balcony. Not a soul in sight. "Easy!" Lana exclaimed to herself, pulling out the mop, planning to finish quickly so she could drink the discounted milk tea in the lobby. But as she turned around, she suddenly heard the bathroom door open. A puff of steam came out, and from inside, a tall man stepped out, wearing only a towel. Lana's eyes widened. Before the man could react, his feet slipped on the wet tile floor. The nearly 1.90 m tall body rushed straight towards Lana. Ah! Thud! The mop flew out and the two of them fell on top of each other, his hot breath blowing on her cheek. Lana froze, her heart pounding, her nose almost touching the firm chest that was still covered in water. Before she could stand up, a crack sound rang out. Lana turned her head sharply. Where the door was ajar, a figure had just pulled a phone into his pocket, leaving as quickly as the wind. The man frowned, his face immediately darkening. His voice was deep and cold. "Who are you?" Lana struggled to sit up, trying to pull her apron back to one side. "Sorry, I went into the wrong room. I thought, out." The man's voice interrupted, cold as ice. "But I said out, out." He stood up, adjusted his towel, his eyes lowered to look at her as if her presence was an unforgivable intrusion. Lana swallowed and backed away, her heart still pounding. The door slammed shut behind her. Nathan Cross had just finished changing his clothes, but he was still frowning at the memory of the scene just now. He picked up the phone to call the hotel manager when the screen lit up. Jake Anderson called. "What's the matter?" Nathan replied briefly. Jake's voice was full of warning. "Nathan, what are you doing in the hotel? The news is spreading fast on the internet." Nathan paused. "What? Wait a minute." Nathan said, then put the phone aside, took out his laptop to read the news. CEO of Cross Group's hugging a housekeeping staff in a luxury hotel. The photo clearly showed him shirtless, the girl's face was red, and most importantly, it looked very intimate. Nathan gritted his teeth and said into the still-connected phone, "Who the hell dared to take this photo?" "Nathan, the stock is falling steadily and the shareholders are making a fuss over there. You have to think of a way quickly." Jake's voice was a little sarcastic, but it was hard to detect if you didn't listen carefully. Nathan nodded. "Okay, I'll handle this. Thanks for the tip, Jake." Nathan finished speaking and hung up. Nathan dialed the hotel receptionist's number. The receptionist's voice rang out mechanically. "Sir, is there a problem?" Nathan's voice rang out low but full of pressure. "Nathan, room 1505. I need to find a housekeeping staff. Please contact the manager here immediately." "Yes, I will report back immediately, sir." A moment later, after receiving news from the hotel, Nathan put his clothes back on and stepped out of the elevator, his leather shoes making a dull sound on the marble floor. The hotel manager, a middle-aged man in a neat suit, was waiting for him at the door of the small conference room. Seeing Nathan, he immediately bowed his head and greeted, "Mr. Cross, I have gathered all the female staff present." Nathan nodded slightly and walked in. The white light from the ceiling made the row of people standing straight in front of him look even more solemn. He slowly glanced over each gaze, each facial expression, as if he was examining every fiber of their thoughts. The first person, no. The second, no. And so on, until the last person, his gaze remained cold, showing no sign of recognition. He squinted slightly, his voice lowered. "None of these are hers." The manager was slightly confused, but still kept a professional smile. "Can you describe it so we can look up the file?" Nathan leaned lightly on the table, his hands clasped together. Brown hair tied up hastily, a few strands of tangled hair covering half of his cheeks. Uniform doesn't fit, looks quite clumsy, but her eyes are very bright. The air fell silent for a beat. Then a waitress at the end of the line spoke cautiously. "Sounds like Lana Bennett. She just started working 3 days ago. But today's shift ended more than an hour ago. She should have gone home." Nathan curled his lips slightly, not because he was happy, but because he finally had a name to target. "Address," he said briefly. The hotel manager coughed lightly, a little embarrassed. "Sir, according to the regulations, we cannot." Nathan raised his head, his eyes like a knife cutting off his words. "Then ask yourself, which is worse, giving the address of a female employee or your hotel being sued for not keeping customers' confidentiality well?" The atmosphere in the small conference room seemed to thicken. The manager swallowed hard, nodding repeatedly. "Please wait a moment," he said, then quickly wrote down Lana Bennett's information, placing it on the table. "This is her address according to the file." Nathan took the paper, stuffed it into his inner pocket, turned and left the room. The sound of his leather shoes echoed throughout the hallway, each step like a beat, signaling a storm was about to hit. He had his sights set on something, and Lana Bennett would have to listen to his offer, whether she wanted to or not. Early the next morning, Lana Bennett closed the door of her old rented room and quickly walked down the stairs. She needed to make it to her morning shift at the coffee shop so she wouldn't be docked. But as soon as she stepped out of the apartment building's gate, her eyes immediately caught sight of a shiny black sedan parked at the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Nathan Cross's angular face and cold gaze. Lana Bennett immediately recognized him as the man she had bumped into in the hotel yesterday. "Get in the car." His voice was low and decisive, like an order. Lana paused, frowning. "Sorry, but I have to go to work. Every minute I stand here, I lose money." Nathan tilted his head, not showing any irritation, but simply said, "I'll pay you. How much?" Lana crossed her arms, glancing at the old watch on her wrist. $20 an hour. I work 5 hours in the morning. You calculate." Nathan curled his lips. $100. Pay now." He pulled out his wallet, clipped a few crisp bills, and held them out the window. Lana opened her eyes wide and took the money from his hand. She smiled brightly, walked around to the other side, opened the car door, and sat in the passenger seat, saying, "With this amount of money, you can talk to me all day." Nathan replied coldly, "I don't have that much free time." Lana pulled her seatbelt, tilted her head to look at him curiously. "So what are you looking for me for? Don't tell me. You want to sue me for yesterday?" Nathan glanced at her, the corners of his lips barely moving. "No." He kept his gaze forward, his hand lightly gripping the steering wheel. "I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend for a while." "You... girlfriend?" Lana widened her eyes. "Are you kidding? I've only met you for less than 10 minutes. I don't even know if you're a meat eater or a vegetarian, and you want me to hold your hand in front of everyone?" Nathan turned around, his eyes sharp. "Do you want to pretend to be my girlfriend or get sued for invading my privacy?" Lana Bennett swallowed hard. "But I still have to go to work. If I pretend to be your girlfriend, I won't have time to go to work. Don't worry, I'll pay you. Definitely more than your monthly salary." Lana tilted her head, her eyes lighting up as if she had just heard the magic keyword. "Pay?" Lana assessed him. "You look rich, right? What's your name? What do you do? At least I need to know a little bit about my fake boyfriend to play my role well." Nathan Cross knew she had agreed, so he handed her a business card. "Nathan Cross, CEO." Lana Bennett nodded, looked at the business card in her hand, then turned back and said, "Then pay first." Lana held out her hand, her expression so serious that Nathan paused a bit. "Are you afraid I'll default on you?" "Of course, we've only just met. Why should I trust you?" Nathan smirked, took out his wallet, counted the brand new bill, and handed it to her. Lana Bennett took it, stuffing it into her coat pocket as if it were the most legitimate transaction in the world. "The more tips if I do a great job?" Lana asked, her eyes sparkling. Nathan was silent for 2 seconds, then nodded slightly. Okay, but don't mix up the rooms again. Lana shrugged, buckled her seatbelt, and muttered, No promises. Mixing up the rooms is my job. Nathan didn't reply, just started the car, quickly swerved into the main lane. Where are we going? Lana tilted her head to look at him. Change clothes. Nathan answered briefly. I don't want to be known as a CEO and let my girlfriend look poor and ragged. Lana looked down at her frayed jacket and faded sneakers, slightly frowning. I think I look good. Many people look at me. Nathan glanced over, his voice cold. They look because they're surprised why you're wearing this in the middle of the downtown area, not because it's beautiful. Lana let out a soft "oh" and leaned back in her seat, the corners of her lips curling up mischievously. That's good. I'll surprise them all more when they see me walking with you. Nathan didn't reply, just stepped on the gas a little more. A few seconds later, he continued, his voice decisive as if he was giving an order. Also, quit your job at the hotel and the coffee shop. From now on, you will be my assistant at the corporation. Lana turned to look at him, her eyes wide open as if she had just heard a ridiculous story. What? I will be your assistant. Aren't you afraid that I will spill coffee on your talented person? Nathan tilted his head, the corners of his lips slightly raised. As long as you don't spill coffee on my documents. Immediately after changing, Nathan took her to the shiny black sedan that turned into the road leading straight to the Cross Group's building. But when they were less than 10 meters from the gate, Lana realized that dozens of camera lenses were pointing at them. In front of the lobby, reporters were crowded together, microphones raised high, flash bulbs flashing continuously. Oh, fans are welcoming you. Lana tilted her head teasingly, but her eyes still wavered slightly when she saw the surrounding scene. Keep quiet and smile. Nathan replied briefly, stopping the car near the main stairs. As soon as the car door opened, a flood of questions rushed in. Mr. Cross, what happened to you and the hotel receptionist yesterday? Was she just your boss who spent the night with you? Is the photo at the hotel real? Nathan did not let them get any closer. He went around to the passenger side, opening the door for Lana. His hand suddenly grabbed hers, gently pulling her out. Lana paused for a second, but then followed his pace. The morning sunlight reflected on the cream-colored suit she was wearing, a blazer that hugged her waist, a pencil skirt that reached past her knees, and a pair of slim, high heels. Her brown hair was neatly tied up, revealing the delicate curve of her neck. The flashbulbs immediately flashed continuously, accompanied by surprised whispers. The reporters immediately rushed over when they recognized Lana Bennett. Miss, what is your relationship with Mr. Cross? You're dressed differently than yesterday. Did you use something to communicate with Mr. Cross? Nathan frowned slightly at the question, which was full of hidden meanings. He immediately took a half-step forward, blocking Lana from the reporters, his shoulder like a solid wall blocking their view. Stay behind me. His voice was low, almost commanding, but Lana gently pushed his hand aside. Her smile appeared suddenly, without any fear. She strode straight toward the microphones that were pointing out, her bright brown eyes shining with confidence. My name is Lana Bennett, she said clearly, her voice loud enough for everyone to record. And no, I didn't spend the night. I didn't sell myself, nor did I need anything in exchange for this outfit. Nathan Cross gave it to me. And why did he give it to me so willingly? Don't you understand? She winked, grabbed Nathan's hand, and held it up to the camera. The reporters paused for a moment, then immediately took pictures. The whispers rose like waves. Nathan stood behind, the corners of his lips involuntarily curling up. He didn't expect that this girl, who was just a waitress a few days ago, could stand in front of dozens of cameras and respond so calmly. He walked forward, standing on the same level as her, his eyes scanning the crowd. She's right, and to save you from guessing, Nathan said firmly, she's my girlfriend. The sound of cameras buzzing loudly, almost swallowing the space. A few new questions were immediately thrown. How long have you two known each other? Do you plan to get married? Nathan squeezed Lana's hand lightly, correcting, I fell in love with her at first sight, and I will definitely take responsibility for my feelings to the end. He looked straight into the camera, declaring, it's the same in business. Nathan Cross will definitely be trustworthy to the end with his partners. Nathan squeezed Lana's hand and led her straight into the lobby. The security team immediately formed a barrier, blocking the reporters who were trying to squeeze in. The revolving glass door closed behind them, and the noise outside was immediately blocked into a layer of distant sound. Lana breathed a sigh of relief, tilting her head to look at him. Are you really trying to make me famous? Nathan didn't turn around, still keeping a long stride towards the elevator, just to suppress the rumors. But I have to admit that you know how to get people's attention. The elevator door opened. They stepped in, and the small space immediately became unusually quiet. Nathan let go of her hand and pressed the button for the highest floor. Lana crossed her arms, leaning against the shiny stainless steel wall. Do you know that holding your hand for so long can cause your company's stock to skyrocket? Nathan glanced over, the corners of his lips curling slightly. As long as it doesn't fall like yesterday, I'm willing to hold your hand all day. Lana chuckled, but her eyes were still mischievous. Remember to pay extra if you want to extend your fake girlfriend contract. Nathan didn't reply, just looked straight ahead. But when the elevator shook slightly, signaling that it was about to reach the floor, he said briefly, if you do as well as you did this morning, I'll pay you double. Lana raised her eyebrows, her mouth murmuring, double sounds appealing. The elevator door opened. Nathan led her into his office. He sat down on the sofa and pointed to Lana to sit next to him, saying, come on, introduce yourself first. I also need to know what your strengths are so I can assign you suitable work. Lana leaned back slightly, crossing her legs comfortably, as if this wasn't the CEO's office, but her own living room. Strengths? I can make good coffee, have the ability to organize things neatly and cleanly, and speak bluntly enough to keep some people up all night. Nathan raised his eyebrows, tapping his hand lightly on the chair. I didn't hire you to joke around. I need someone quick-witted enough to know when to shut up and when to speak up to shut others up. Can you do it? Lana rested her chin on her hand and thought for a few seconds, then nodded. As long as you pay me enough, I'll make your entire conference room quiet. Nathan leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. We'll see how far you can go. There's a meeting with a major shareholder this afternoon. You'll come with me. Lana blinked, then smiled slowly. Oh, I guess this is my time to play the role of powerful girlfriend. The corners of Nathan's lips curved up slightly, a smile that was almost unnoticeable. Okay, Miss Lana Bennett, welcome to your new assistant job. The shareholder meeting room was packed this afternoon. The atmosphere was already tense. Lana sat to Nathan's right, trying to maintain her serious CEO girlfriend demeanor, until the coffee tray that the assistant brought in slid lightly on the table. Originally intending to pour Nathan a cup, she accidentally let the stirring spoon hit the side of the cup, lightly splashing the black coffee, straight into the face of Mr. Pitt, one of the most difficult shareholders. Lana quickly pulled out a tissue in front of her and gave it to him. I'm sorry, tissue, please wipe it quickly. Mr. Pitt angrily threw her tissue on the floor, shouting, What a thoughtlessness! Lana nodded, her expression calm. Lana's words made the entire conference room freeze for half a second. Then a few soft coughs sounded from the corner of the table, as if someone was trying to hold back laughter. Mr. Pitt's face turned red. It was unclear whether it was because of the hot coffee or anger. He slammed the table with a bang. Do you think this is a place to joke? Another shareholder immediately chimed in, his voice cold. Mr. Cross, is this the girlfriend image you want to bring to the board? The hotel scandal has not yet subsided, and now she has humiliated you even more. A CEO who cannot manage his own personal affairs should give up his seat. That's right, another voice interrupted. With a lowly background and poor behavior, can he understand the standards of cross groups? Nathan leaned over to speak, but Lana placed her hand on his, shaking her head slightly. Her gaze was unexpectedly sharp. She stood up and walked towards Perry. Her voice was still soft, but each word was so clear that every sound in the room seemed to be swallowed up. Coming from a lowly background. It's interesting to hear that from Mr. Perry, who in 2019 had to ask Nathan to rescue the Houston project from bankruptcy in exchange for 7% of the shares. Perry paled. Lana turned to the silver-haired shareholder. Mr. Smith, do I need to remind you of the $2 million loss from the Asian investment fund? I still have a copy of your careless email to the secret partner. A younger shareholder was about to object when she glanced over, and you, the one who puts the company's interests first, secretly transferred a $5 million AI project to your brother-in-law's company last month. What should I call that? The room was dead silent. Only the sound of a pen tapping out of rhythm at the corner of the table remained. Lana smiled, turned back to her seat, and gently placed her hand on Nathan's shoulder. So, before you doubt his leadership ability, perhaps you should look at yourself first. Nathan leaned back in his chair, the corner of his lips curled up slightly. His eyes locked on Lana, and in an instant both the coffee stain and the clumsy girlfriend became the fuel that helped her explode at the right moment. Lana conveniently took another tissue and placed it in front of Mr. Pitt. Here, there's still tissue if you want to wipe off the coffee smell. The meeting ended sooner than expected. Lana went out into the hallway to catch her breath, and as soon as she stepped out, she heard a deep voice behind her. You speak quite sharply for a newcomer. She turned around and saw a man in a gray suit, handsome in appearance but with a somewhat unpredictable sparkle in his eyes. He extended his hand. Jake Grant, I am also a shareholder of Cross Groups and a friend of Nathan's. Lana shook hands but kept her distance. Oh, so you must also know the people I just reminded in the meeting room? Jake smiled slightly, shaking his head. No, I find you very interesting. Is there a chance we should have a private talk? Lana raised her eyebrows, her lips curved slightly. I'm not used to having private talks with my boyfriend's friends, but thank you for the invitation. She left, leaving Lucas leaning against the wall, his eyes looking as if he was calculating something. When she turned back, Nathan had just walked out of the conference room. The conference room door closed. The sound of their shoes echoed evenly in the empty hallway. Nathan glanced over. The corner of his lips curled slightly. Do you know what you just did? Lana turned her head, her eyes sparkling as if she had just shown off an achievement. Of course. Turning a slip into a spectacular counterattack. You should thank me. Nathan chuckled softly, a rare, warm sound. Thanks? I'm still considering paying you an additional strategic bonus. She crossed her arms, walking half a pace faster, her voice humorous. Then remember to add the money for indomitable spirit and sharp tongue. He shook his head slightly, both amused and surprised. You are truly the first person to make my shareholder meeting room both silent and sadly wiping coffee off their faces. Lana shrugged, looking innocent. It was the spoon's fault, not mine. But I guess from now on you'll believe that I'm not just clumsy. Nathan looked at her, his eyes unreadable but clearly filled with interest. Yeah, and I think there will be more surprises. It was already day 2. Lana appeared at the main lobby of Cross Groups carrying a long bag of bread and an XL-sized milk teapot. Yesterday's cream suit was replaced by a navy blue office dress, but she still stood out because she paired it with a pair of pure white sneakers. The elevator just opened. Lana walked in with a group of employees, not noticing her milk teapot, tilting slowly. A large hand helped her lift the milk teapot. That hand was strong, with long fingers and just enough strength to keep the milk teapot from falling down. Be careful, clumsy lady. A deep, teasing voice rang out. Lana raised her head, slightly surprised when she recognized a familiar face. Jake Andrew, a well-fitted gray suit, dark silk tie, a light scent of perfume. Oh, you're the newly curious shareholder yesterday. Lana smiled, not forgetting to hug the bag of bread tightly like a treasure. Jake tilted his head slightly, his smile not exactly friendly. And you are still as interesting as ever. I think Nathan is lucky. If you say that, your friends might get jealous. Lana narrowed her eyes, then pressed the button for her floor. Jake didn't answer right away, just stood next to her, his eyes glancing at her white sneakers and then stopping at her neatly tied hair, as if he was remembering every detail. When the elevator reached the 15th floor, he stepped out first but still managed to turn his head. I hope we'll meet again, in more interesting circumstances. The door closed, leaving Lana blinking a few times. In her mind, she had the feeling that Jake was not simply Nathan's friend, but rather was hiding some kind of private game. Lana stepped out of the elevator on the top floor, one hand carrying a bag of bread, the other holding an XL-sized milk tea. Nathan's office door was ajar, and a low voice could be heard from inside. Nathan's voice mixed with another male voice. Without much time to think, Lana pushed the door open and entered. "Mr. Cross, I bought bread for—" "Oh." Bang. The milk teacup in her hand tilted slightly. The pearls and sweet milk flowed out. Hitting the extended contract spread out on the table. Both Nathan and the man opposite stopped talking, looking at the scene that had just happened. Nathan frowned, and the other man was the partner who was preparing to sign the contract with Cross Group. "Sorry, I'll wipe it right away. Lana hurriedly grabbed a tissue, but the more she wiped, the more the wet stains spread. Nathan pulled the stack of papers aside, his voice restrained. "This contract is worth several $100 million, Lana." Lana looked up, smiling half shyly and half confidently. Who knows? When the partner sees this milk tea stain, he might think Cross Groups is very sweet. The partner opposite burst out laughing. "Nathan, you have an interesting girlfriend. Compared to your cold personality, I like this cheerful way of talking more." Nathan glanced at Lana, his eyes mixed with helplessness and caution. "Sweetness doesn't help sign a contract." His voice dropped. Lana winked at the partner. "But it helps make the work less stressful, right, sir?" The partner laughed comfortably. "Yes, I was mentally prepared to meet a serious and unapproachable Nathan Cross, but it seems today I met a more interesting version." Nathan took a deep breath, tapped his fingers on the table as if to calm himself, and took out another contract. "Let's go back to the main terms," he said to his partner, but still glanced at Lana as if to remind her to sit still. Lana obediently sat down on the chair next to him, but her eyes were still darting around. She noticed that when the partner finished signing and stood up, he shook Nathan's hand and then turned to whisper to her, "Keep this attitude, girl. Sometimes naturalness makes people remember forever." The door just closed. Nathan leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and looked at her. "On the second day of work, you gave me a reason to work overtime to process the new contract." Nathan shook his head slightly. "Nayla, the situation just now was just luck. You should focus on your work more seriously." Nala Bennett pouted and said, "All right, stop nagging, sir." Lana brought out a cup of milk tea and placed it in front of Nathan. Nathan looked at the cup of milk tea in front of him, his eyes slightly surprised. "You plan to bribe me with sugar and pearls?" Lana propped her chin, smiled brightly. "It's not bribery, it's mental compensation." Nathan was silent for a few seconds, then said, "You take it home. I only drink black coffee." Lana's eyes widened. "Just try a sip. I guarantee you will broaden your taste buds." Nathan sighed, picked up the cup, and took a small sip. The sweet taste of milk, the rich aroma, and a pearl in his mouth made Nathan pause. His eyebrows furrowed, as if he had just swallowed a wrong decision. Too sweet. He put the cup down on the table, gently pushing it towards her. Lana frowned. "It's not to the point where you have to say that, right?" "Enough, Lana. You've broken too many of my rules. Remember that you're just a fake girlfriend." Lana was a little stunned by Nathan's words, but then pursed her lips. "Well, fake girlfriend. But at least I'm trying to make this atmosphere less dry like a desert." Nathan tilted his head, his eyes cold like a winter lake. "I don't need the desert to turn into cotton candy." The two of them stared at each other, Then a knock sounded on the door, and then the door opened. Jake walked in, holding a thick file in his hand, but his eyes quickly scanned Nathan's face and stopped at Lana. "Oh, am I disturbing you two while you're discussing?" His voice trailed off as if he was deliberately probing. Lana shook her head. "Nothing." Jake Andrew didn't ask much more. He brought the file in front of Nathan. "Here's your new contract. I've already investigated. Chris Group is very reputable. I'm sure if you sign this time, it will bring the group to a new level." Nathan rarely smiled. "Thank you. You always work so carefully, Jake." Jake nodded and smiled. His eyes suddenly turned to the cup of milk tea on the table. He frowned slightly. "Surprise, Nathan. Do you also drink milk tea?" Nathan silently glanced at Nala. She immediately went over and picked up the milk tea and hugged it to her chest. "It's mine. I'll drink both." Having said that, Nala angrily walked out of the room. Before leaving, her eyes glanced over the file that Jake had just brought. She felt something was very strange. Leaving the office, Lana frowned as she took a sip of her milk tea. She felt a sense of unease like a cat scratching her head. She remembered it clearly when Jake handed Nathan the file. The bottom corner of the cover had a strange symbol printed on it, exactly like the logo she saw in a newspaper article this morning. An article about a company that was suspected of contract fraud. Lana slowed down and lowered her milk teacup. "Maybe I'm thinking too much. Or," she muttered, "Miss Bennett." Ugh. A low voice sounded right behind her. Lana turned around and saw Jake walking towards her, his hands in his pockets, his demeanor leisurely as if the entire hallway belonged to him. "Mr. Andrew, is something wrong?" Lana asked, while raising her milk tea cup to drink. Jake stood closer, his eyes glancing from her white sneakers to her eyes. "Is Nathan always this difficult? The first thing he says to others is usually, 'You did it wrong.'" Lana shrugged slightly. "I'm used to it. He's grumpy, but he's quite nice, at least. Not fake." Jake chuckled, his voice trailing off as if he was probing. "If you were my assistant, I promise I wouldn't blame you, even if you spilled a bucket of milk tea on the contract." Lana squinted, half joking, half serious. "It sounds more like a seduction." Jake shrugged, still smiling, but his eyes never left her. "It's just an invitation. Who knows, you might find yourself in the right place." He walked away, leaving Lana standing in the middle of the hallway, both confused and slightly puzzled. The large conference room was on the 15th floor. Nathan and Mr. Evans sat opposite each other. Jake sat beside them as a coordinator. The contract for the expansion of cooperation between Cross Group and Chris Group was placed neatly on the table, along with a prepared signature pen. Mr. Evans said in a calm voice, "If there are no changes, I think we can sign it today." Nathan nodded slightly, his hand touching the pen. At that moment, the door opened slightly. Nala walked in. On the tray were 3 cups of steaming hot coffee, along with a bright smile. "Sorry to bother you. I think everyone might need some caffeine." Nathan frowned very slightly, but because his partner was present, he did not say anything. Nala placed the first cup in front of Nathan, the second cup in front of Mr. Evans. And when she handed the third cup to Jake, her wrist accidentally tilted a little. Bang! A stream of coffee spilled down the edge of the table, and quickly spread across the contract page. "Oh, sorry, Mr. Evans." Nala quickly took out a tissue, pretending to wipe it in a hurry, but her hand accidentally rubbed hard, causing the ink on the paper to smudge even more. Nathan stood up, his voice restrained. "Lana!" Jake frowned, standing up to help Mr. Evans avoid the coffee stain. Mr. Evans frowned slightly, then angrily said, "Nathan, I heard this is your girlfriend? She really has no sense." He stood up decisively and said, "It seems I have misjudged your judgment of people. I think we don't need to keep this contract anymore, at least until you chase this girl away." Mr. Evans finished speaking and quickly walked out of the office. Jake hurriedly chased after him. "Wait, Mr. Evans, listen to our explanation." Nathan's office was closed. The air inside was thick. He stood behind the desk, his hands on the wooden surface, his eyes cold. Do you know that just now was Cross Group's biggest opportunity this year? Nala crossed her arms, trying to stay calm. I know. And I also know that Mr. Evans is not trustworthy. You should be more careful, especially when the person who introduced him was Jake. Nathan looked up, his eyes sharp. Be careful. With Jake? Nayla. He is my longtime best friend. He has been with me through countless big deals. How long have you known him to dare to come to such a conclusion? Nala clenched her fists slightly. I don't have any evidence, but my intuition says... Intuition? Nathan interrupted, his voice full of sarcasm. You ruined today's entire meeting just because of a vague feeling? Do you think this is a joke? Nala was silent for a few seconds, then replied softly but firmly, At least, I dare to do something to prevent you from being fooled. Nathan took a deep breath, as if controlling his anger, then turned his back. Go outside, Nala. I need some peace. She pursed her lips, about to say more, but then turned away. As soon as the door closed, a figure appeared in the corner of the hallway, Jake Andrew. He leaned his shoulder against the wall, the corner of his lips curling slightly as the last sentence of the argument reached his ears. Jake's gaze flashed with a cold light. Okay, Miss Bennett, he muttered. Consider it your choice to stand on the opposing side. Nala sat at her desk, eyes glued to the screen, but her mind still wandering. She had just seen a message from the bank saying her account had only a few odd numbers left, and a feeling of fatigue crept into her every breath. A soft knock on the door. She looked up. Nathan was standing there, holding an XL-sized milk tea, a straw in it, and a small bag of cookies. He put it down on the table, his voice lower than usual. For this morning. Nala paused, glanced at the milk tea, then looked back at him. Are you bribing me? Nathan's lips curved slightly, but his eyes remained serious. It's more like an apology. And I need you tonight. She blinked. What do you mean? Nathan straightened up, crossed his arms. There's an important party. I want you to come along as my assistant and girlfriend. Nala raised her eyebrows, half surprised and half doubtful. Aren't you afraid I'll ruin something again? This time, Nathan replied slowly, you just need to smile and stand next to me. Let everyone see that Cross Group is fine, and so am I. She looked at the milk tea, then at him, and took a sip. So, what do I need to wear to look suitable for a difficult CEO? Nathan smiled faintly. That, I'll take care of it. That evening, the five-star hotel in the city center was brightly lit. Nathan's shiny black car stopped. The door opened. Nathan stepped out first, his demeanor calm, his handsome but cold face as usual. Immediately after, his hand reached out, helping Nala step down. She appeared in an emerald satin dress, a light bodycon dress, the skirt softly falling to her ankles. Her hair was loose in light waves. Her nude high heels were delicate. In contrast to the luxury of the party, Nala's smile was bright and somewhat innocent, causing a few curious eyes to pause longer. Nathan leaned slightly, letting Nala hold his arm. They walked onto the red carpet together. The combination of a cold CEO and a young and vibrant girl made those standing nearby whisper, "Is that Nathan Cross? His new girlfriend? It looks suitable." Entering the hall, the warm yellow light covered the entire large room. The suits and sparkling evening gowns intertwined with the bustling laughter. Nathan led Nala to the table of important figures in the business world, each step attracting attention. When he stopped, Nathan smiled politely, shook hands with everyone in turn, and said clearly, "Let me introduce you to everyone. This is Nala Bennett, my girlfriend." A chorus of compliments immediately followed. "Wow, you two are such a perfect match." "I didn't expect Nathan to be this radiant." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Nala." Nala was a little surprised, but still smiled back, nodding slightly to each person. In that moment, she felt she truly belonged to his world. The two had just finished toasting with a group of partners when Nathan's phone vibrated. He took it out and saw a message from Jake. "Nathan, I don't want to say this while you're happy, but there are some things you should know. Nayla approached you with a purpose. The photo of her lover that was leaked earlier was arranged by her. She even hired a detective to investigate you. I have evidence. Nathan's fingers paused on the screen. His eyes slowly moved away from the phone and towards Nala. The smile on his lips faded slightly, replaced by a cold trace of suspicion. Nala had no idea what message he had just read. She had also just received a new message from the detective she hired. I found a contact point between Jake Andrew and Blan Evans. There was a cash transaction between them. I'll send more details soon. She squeezed the phone lightly, her heart beating fast. That was why she'd been eating instant noodles all the time recently. All the money Nathan paid her for pretending to be his girlfriend, she had spent on hiring this detective. She turned to speak to Nathan, but as soon as she opened her mouth, the lighting in the hall suddenly changed. From the stage, a giant LED screen suddenly lit up. The surrounding chatter began to quiet down. Each image appeared it was her personal profile, with a large title, Nala Bennett. Poor family background, heavy debt, college dropout. The dry words and a few old photos appeared like a resume, flipped upside down in the crowd. Nala stood there, stunned, the glass of wine in her hand trembling slightly. Whispers began to spread throughout the hall. Dropped out of school. Still in debt. How can you be worthy of Nathan Cross? Probably just approaching him for the money. Nala felt like all eyes were scrutinizing every strand of hair, every hem of her dress. She swallowed hard, turned to look at Nathan, hoping he would smile faintly, say something to deny all the rumors. But Nathan just stood there, his eyes cold, his lips pressed tightly together. In his head, Jake's words still echoed. He didn't open his mouth. A soft laugh from someone rang out like a knife piercing her heart. Nala took a deep breath, trying to hold back, but still asked, "You didn't say anything?" Nathan was silent, not looking at her anymore, just turned his face away to avoid her gaze. Nala smiled faintly, but her eyes were already moist. "So that's how it is." Without waiting for Nathan to reply, she put her glass of wine down on the table, turned around, and walked away. The sound of her high heels hitting the marble floor was heavier than ever. When she was about to reach the door, she stopped, turned her head to look straight into his eyes, and said slowly, "Nathan Cross, one day you will regret this moment." The words rang out clearly in the silent hall. Nala turned away, her small figure quickly blending into the crowd, leaving Nathan standing motionless amidst the yellow lights and endless chatter. The next morning, Nathan walked into the office as usual, but today the atmosphere was uncomfortably strange. The desk outside, which was usually filled with the sound of Nala typing on the keyboard, was now empty. There was no longer the sound of her mumbling that he was difficult, nor was there a cup of milk tea placed out of place next to his black coffee. Nathan turned on his computer, trying to focus on his work, but his eyes still unconsciously glanced out into the empty space outside. It felt like a piece of the puzzle was missing, and that piece, no matter how annoying, had become a hard-to-break habit. Jake walked in, followed by Mr. Evans. Both of them smiled politely. "Nathan, I hope we can close the contract today," Evans said, his voice firm. The conference room was quickly prepared. The brand-new contract was placed in front of him, the familiar fountain pen in his hand. Evans repeated the terms smoothly. Jake sat beside him. Everything was going perfectly. Too perfectly. Nathan put down his pen, then suddenly stopped. In his head, Nala's voice from the day before rang out. "You look so cunning, can you believe it?" The image of Nala bending down to wipe the coffee, her eyes flashing with worry but not confusion, suddenly made his heart tighten. He slowly put down his pen, raised his head to look straight at Evans. "Actually, I want to review a few terms." "Review?" Mr. Evans frowned. "Mr. Cross, we've spent weeks checking every detail. That's why. I want to review one last time." Nathan took the file, closed it firmly. "Postpone until tomorrow." The room fell silent. The atmosphere was heavy. Jake Andrew slowly stood up, both hands on the table. "Nathan, this is nonsense. We're wasting our time. Chris Group has many potential partners. You know that. Then let them pursue. Nathan looked at his best friend with cold eyes. Mr. Evans slammed his hand on the table. The market is volatile. The stock is rising. It's now or never. Nathan saw the backlash and knew Nala was right. This pressure was not normal. The decision is mine. He put the contract in his briefcase. See you tomorrow. Without another word, Nathan left the room, leaving the angry men behind. Nathan left the building and walked straight to the parking lot. He sat in the driver's seat, opened his phone, and dialed a familiar number. Do me a favor. His voice dropped. Find out everything about Chris Group and Jake Andrew. The sooner the better. 2 days later, the thick file was placed on Nathan's desk. The detective, looking hesitant, said, Mr. Cross, your friend Jake, and Evans have known each other for a long time. This contract is a trap. If you sign it, Cross Group will suffer tens of millions in losses, and the control of the shares will fall into the hands of Chris Group. Nathan flipped through the pages, his eyes cold as steel. In the pile of photos, some of them showed Jake handing an envelope to someone, the reporter who had leaked Nala's photo at the party that day. Nathan's breathing became heavy. What about Nala? He asked. The detective nodded. That smear campaign was set up by Jake. He hired someone to dig up personal information, then used it to make her suspicious. The room fell silent. Nathan closed his eyes for a few seconds, then opened them, his voice cold. Call Jake Andrew to see me. Now. The door opened. Jake walked in, his face as calm as ever, but his eyes held a hint of challenge. Nathan, I heard you wanted to see me urgently, he asked, his voice as if nothing serious. Nathan didn't answer right away. He leaned against the desk, tossing the investigation file onto the table. Explain. His voice was low and cold. Jake glanced at the file, his lips curling slightly. You investigated me? That's a bit disappointing. Nathan took a step forward, his eyes never leaving the other person. What did you do to Nala? And why did you bring Evans here? Jake chuckled, then took a thin envelope from his vest pocket. He opened it, pulling out a few photos. They were of Nala in her private home. Jake placed them on the table one by one. You know, Nathan, I could just randomly send someone to do something and then make it look like it was an accident. Nathan clenched his fists. Are you threatening me? Jake leaned back in his chair, his voice cold. I'm just giving you a choice. Sign the contract with Chris Group, or you'll get bad news about her. The air in the room was thick. Only the sound of the clock ticking could be heard. Nathan stood still in front of the contract that Jake had left on the table. The pen in his hand was heavy. He knew. Once he signed this, everything he had built could go up in smoke. But Jake's eyes, when he put those photos on the table and the image of Nala facing danger, left him with no other choice. Sign. Just one stroke of the pen, the dry swish sound echoed in the room like a life sentence for himself. Jake stuffed the contract into his briefcase, his face triumphant. Wise decision, Nathan, he said, and left, leaving a heavy, suffocating void. A small coffee shop on the corner of the street. Rush hour, customers coming and going busily. Nala wore a brown apron, her hair tied up high, her hands nimbly carrying a tray of drinks. The door opened. Nathan walked in. His elegant black suit was completely out of place in this rustic space. He looked around. It only took a few seconds to find her. Nala paused for a moment, then immediately turned away, pretending to be busy wiping the table. Nathan walked straight to the counter, took out an envelope from his vest. We need to talk. It's not convenient here, she replied curtly, still not looking at him. He didn't give up, followed her to the table where the customer had just ordered, tried to hand over the envelope. This is all the money I have left. I apologize, Nala, for everything. Nala tilted her head slightly, as if wanting to avoid confrontation. But at that moment, the coffee tray in her hand tilted. Pop. The hot latte slid down, spilling straight onto Nathan's vest sleeve. Before he could react, he took a step back, right into the chair where a boy had just stood up. Bang! Nathan lost his balance, tripped backwards, and hit his back against the cake counter. The birthday cake that had been placed for the guests slid straight down, right onto his face. The whole shop burst into laughter. A customer whistled, a few took out their phones to film. Nala stood frozen, her face red but still angry, so she just silently handed him a tissue. Nathan slowly removed the cream that was all over his face, wiped it roughly, then smiled slightly. "I don't care. Really." That sentence made Nala a little unsteady. He was still standing there, his whole body covered in coffee and cream, but his eyes were the eyes of someone who was truly remorseful. "I just want to apologize. No matter how much you hate me, I still want to say this." Nala pursed her lips, her heart trembling slightly, not because the scene just now was funny, but because she felt that this was no longer the cold, rigid Nathan. Nathan stood there for a few seconds, as if waiting for her to respond. But Nala remained silent, just looking at him, her eyes a mixture of confusion and defense. He nodded slightly, placing the thick envelope on the table. "Even if you don't need it, I still want you to take it. Consider it. To make up for what I did." With that, Nathan turned and walked out of the shop. The wind chime jingled softly as the door closed. Nala stood still, her eyes following his figure disappearing down the street. She bent down, her hand touching the envelope. Heavy, very heavy. Gently opening a corner, the stacks of brand new money were revealed. Nala bit her lip. "This amount is too much. Even if it's compensation, it shouldn't be this much." A feeling of unease rose like a cold wave down her spine. She frowned slightly, reached out to close the envelope, but her heart beat faster with each beat. If Nathan really despised me like everyone said, he wouldn't have come here, let alone given me this money. But if he did, it meant there was something he wasn't telling me. Nala glanced out the window. The street outside was still bustling, but Nathan's tall figure had disappeared. She took a deep breath, her voice whispering softly, as if talking to herself. "I can't just sit here. I have to know the truth." The next morning, the sky was gray. The clouds seemed to weigh down on the tall buildings. Nala sat at the small kitchen table, holding a cup of coffee, but her eyes were far away. The phone lay still on the table until she picked it up, hesitated for a moment, and then dialed the number of an old colleague at Cross Group. The phone rang 3 times. A familiar female voice rang out. "Nala? Oh my God, is that really you? Are you okay?" Nala smiled softly. "Fine. For now. I just wanted to ask, how's the company doing?" The other end of the line was silent for a few seconds, then replied, "You probably don't know. Our new CEO is Jake Andrew. He just announced it yesterday." Nala paused. "Jake is the CEO?" "Yeah, Nathan. He's packing up to leave." Everyone was shocked. No one knew what happened, but the contract with Chris Group was signed and the management was transferred to Jake right after. Nathan didn't say a word. Nala's voice trailed off. "He's really leaving?" "Yeah, he's packing. He looks tired." The call ended, but Nala's ears were still ringing. She stood still in the middle of the kitchen, her heart pounding, feeling like the floor beneath her feet was sliding away. Jake, the new CEO. Nathan left in silence. Everything connected into a bitter truth, and perhaps the thick envelope yesterday was his last goodbye. Nala ran along the sidewalk, barely paying attention to the honking of the car horns behind her. The large glass doors of the Cross Group reflected her silhouette, urgent, mixed with a little panic. Entering the lobby, she immediately saw him. Nathan was standing by the reception desk, wearing a dark suit, pulling a suitcase. Next to him was a cardboard box containing personal belongings, a few files, a family photo frame, and a white porcelain coffee cup. "Nathan!" Nala's voice rang out, making him pause. He turned around, his eyes suddenly surprised, then quickly became calm. "What are you doing here?" She approached, breathing heavily. I just heard you left. Why, Jake, what did he do? Nathan pursed his lips, his eyes looking away. It doesn't matter anymore. Everything is done. I just need to live well. It doesn't matter to you, but it does to me. Nala's voice dropped, but she was determined. If everything is a trap, Jake will continue. Not only will he hurt you, but he will hurt the company. Nathan frowned slightly, as if to stop her from continuing, but Nala turned to the receptionist. Inform the boardroom. I, Nala Bennett, request to reopen the emergency shareholders meeting. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became heavy. A few employees passing by stopped, looking at them curiously. Nathan looked at her for a long time, his eyes complicated. You know, if you do that, you will put yourself in danger, right? Nala replied, her voice calm but her eyes shining. It's better than standing still and watching you lose everything. 20th floor meeting room, cross group. The atmosphere was tense. All the key shareholders were present, their eyes focused on the empty chair reserved for the CEO. Jake Andrews sat at the head of the table, his face confident, his hands clasped together as if waiting for a ready victory. The door opened. Nala walked in first, followed by Nathan. Even though he had been asked to leave his position, he still sat down in the chair opposite Jake. Today's meeting is to vote on the appointment of a new CEO. An elderly shareholder spoke up. Wait. Nala interrupted, her voice clear and decisive. Before the vote, I have evidence related to Jake Andrew and Mr. Blan Evans deliberately manipulating the cooperation contract in order to gain personal benefits and eliminate Mr. Nathan Cross. Whispers arose around the table. Jake raised his eyebrows, trying to stay calm. Ms. Bennett, you are no longer an employee here. You have no right. I have the right when what I say directly affects the assets and reputation of Cross Group. Nala interrupted, then put a thick file on the table, along with a USB. On the big screen, all the evidence in the form of images and recordings appeared. The entire meeting room seemed to explode. A female shareholder stood up. Jake Andrew, this is an act of betrayal of the company. Jake clenched the armrests of his chair, his eyes filled with anger as he looked at Nala. You will pay for this. Nathan then spoke, his voice low and firm. No, Jake, the one who will pay is you. The door to the conference room suddenly opened. 2 uniformed policemen entered, followed by an inspector in a black coat. Sorry for interrupting. The inspector spoke, his voice stern. We have an arrest warrant for Mr. Jake Andrew on charges of commercial fraud, corruption, and collusion to appropriate company assets. Jake was stunned. What are you talking about? This is a fabrication. I don't... The policeman stepped forward, took out a pair of handcuffs. We have enough evidence. Please speak at the station for any defense. Jake's arms were twisted behind him. A cold click was heard as the iron handcuffs locked his wrists. His face was red with anger and humiliation, his eyes still fixed on Nala. You will regret touching me. Nala stood still, her eyes calm but cold. Nathan just crossed his arms, watching Jake's every step as he was escorted out. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence in the room. A shareholder let out a sigh. Perhaps Cross Group just escaped a nightmare. Nathan tilted his head slightly to look at Nala, but she only smiled slightly. And you escaped a bad friend. The meeting room gradually emptied, leaving only Nathan and Nala. He stood by the window, silently watching the clouds drifting slowly outside. You know, his voice dropped, Cross Group needs an assistant like you, and me too. Nala tilted her head, her eyes still filled with doubt. Are you talking about work or personal matters, Mr. Cross? Nathan turned around, stepped closer. The distance between them was only a few steps. Both. Ah, he said firmly, come back to be my assistant. And, if you agree, come back to me too. Nala chuckled, her smile both gentle and teasing. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at when you have a poor, clumsy girlfriend who often spills coffee? Nathan smiled, his eyes never leaving her. As long as she's you, then I don't care what others think. At that moment, there were no more footsteps, no phone calls, no air conditioning, just the two of them and the warmth of a new beginning. Nala nodded slightly, her eyes shining with a familiar mischievousness. Then, remember to prepare a few extra shirts. Nathan laughed, but in the depths of his eyes was relief and genuine joy.